All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Caitlin James. I'm the Regional Assistant Director for Southern California for Lehigh University. And I am here to support RACC, the Regional Admissions of California, on how college decisions are made. So first off, to tell you a little bit more, what is RACC? So RACC is the Regional Admissions Counselors of California. We're an organization comprised of more than 173 admissions counselors and professionals from over 119 institutions who work with students and counselors throughout California while representing universities and colleges outside of the state of California. So today, as I mentioned, we are going to talk about how college decisions are made. So this is kind of our overview. We'll talk about understanding colleges and universities, their selectivity, application review types and styles, institutional priorities, and the holistic review process. We'll also talk about understanding your application, and thinking about what is considered, as well as your game plan, how you might want to start working on some of the things that you want to put in and make sure that admissions officers know about you when considering your college application. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is just selectivity. You might hear a lot out there about how competitive college can be, and that may be the case, but there's a lot of different ranges of types of selectivity. So it is measured by the percentage of students who are admitted. The lower the percentages, the more selective a particular school. We also have something called open enrollment or open admission. That generally means that the admission process is unselective and non-competitive. The only criteria for admission is that the student have a high school diploma or GED certificate. They may be looking at, test scores if that's a requirement, or just your overall high school diploma. But most colleges with open admission are community colleges or colleges which grant associate's degrees. So that's going to be completely open. A selective college admits fewer than half of the students that apply. And then a highly selective college admits about fewer than 20% of students that apply. You'll see different ranges for some of these things, but the good news is that most colleges accept more than half of their applicants. So the average acceptance rates for all four-year colleges in the United States is about 66%, or 2/3 of applicants. So just note that there are a lot of opportunities out there, and those universities and colleges are going to be so lucky to have you no matter where you decide to attend. So different types of application review process. So we have holistic versus formula. So one of the things that we might look at is holistic. So looking at everything that you have to offer. We're looking at not only your academics, but your involvement, organizations, leadership, your writing samples, things like that, versus a formula. So formula just means we're looking for maybe X GPA at this particular school, or maybe we're looking at X GPA with a certain particular test score, depending on if you submit that or if that's required by that institution. So it could be a little bit simpler. You might just have to look at a chart, see where you stand and what you might need, and that's where you qualify and you could be admitted. So a little more straightforward, always a great question to ask. Another thing that you might ask is who reads your application and how. So some universities might read it by a particular region. They might divide by high school, by major or an academic college, or admissions counselor or a particular committee. So my experience, I've done it in a variety of different ways. And so it's kind of unique to that. So it's always a great question to ask is who is going to be reading my application? And how many readers per file? How many sets of eyes will lay on my application? So something to always note is that it can vary by school. The average is maybe 2 to 4 readers, depending on the time frame, and how quick and how the volume of applications as well. And there are a couple of different application deadlines too. So rolling admission means that you could submit your application at any point, and then you might be able to hear back within maybe 1 to 2 weeks, and find out your admissions decision, pretty quick turnaround at any given point throughout that time. So it's a pretty nice to be able to know that well in advance. We also have something called early decision. So early decision is binding, and it means that if you are admitted to that institution, you are committing to that institution that you will attend. So take that very seriously if you decide to apply to an early decision school or through the early decision process. There usually has to be a sign-off or a form agreement by a counselor and your parents as well when you submit them. So just note that there may be some restrictions in that as well. So talk with your admissions counselor or your high school counselor for more questions about that. There's also something called early action. And so that simply means there may be a benefit to applying early, whether that means getting your admissions decision earlier or well in advance, or maybe it means you're qualifying for scholarships and you're considered for those by that earlier deadline. Highly recommend checking out what are the benefits of your different deadlines and is there a benefit to applying earlier. Some schools may encourage you to, as space may fill up in a particular program. So it's important to note the benefits of applying early and not waiting till that deadline. And then we have regular decision. May means that you don't have any scholarships on the table or just a different round, right? And so they're still going to consider you for opportunities or for space at that particular institution. So just always ask if there's a difference between regular decision or early action. So it can be a lot of different things, but something just to keep in mind with those different application deadlines too. Now, here's something to consider is that universities are going to have different priorities. Every university, based on where they are, based on if they're public or private, might have different things that they're trying to fill based on the specialties or the initiatives at that particular college. So some of the things that may impact some of those decisions are going to be budget. How much scholarship dollars can they give out to reward students maybe from out of state or to fund certain programs within that? Strategic plan, maybe there are opportunities where they're looking to recruit more students in the state of California. Here we are. So that might be something that they're considering in their plan. Overall headcount or enrollment. We're not always perfect and that sometimes we might over enroll one year versus another. And so that may mean that we're having to admit less than we did in the prior year, just to make sure that we balance out and we still have our university experience is still great for the students that have chosen us, that are on our campus, and we make sure that they're not impacted by some of that enrollment challenges. Academic colleges or programs or majors. There might be a new academic college, like a college of health, for example, and they're wanting to grow that particular program. So they might look to some of those majors to hope to fill some of those spaces. So if that's something that you're interested in, it could be a great benefit for you to apply because there may be a more rewarding opportunity for you to enroll there. Search for students with special talents or skill sets. That can mean a variety of different ranges. It might also mean within athletic recruitment as well, which is kind of a totally different ball game, so to speak. And so there could be a lot of things that we might be looking for in terms of how to fulfill some of those areas. Crafting a diverse class. So that is going to be important to us in the fact that we want to make sure our class is well-rounded and the fact that it might not only be from our particular state where our university is, but maybe from all 50 states we have representation in a variety of countries around the world. So that global initiative could also be really important to us as well. And we're also looking for people of different backgrounds and types. Now, we can't necessarily consider that in the admissions process. However, it is going to be something that we do look at once we have our admissions decisions or we're doing outreach to encourage students to apply to our institutions. And the overall academic profile or reputation. Much to a lot of universities, some universities really care about where their rankings are. Some students really care about where rankings are. It's up to you if you decide to utilize something like that. But that's going to be something that can factor into where we make admissions decisions and how we move the needle in those ways. And so that's something that also can come into consideration here too. All right, so we kind of alluded to this a little bit, but I really want to talk about the holistic review process. Now, how big each chunk is here in this graph here might vary by school. As you can see, there's a lot of different things that are listed here, over 8 different things, and that can really determine and depend on every institution that you might be considering. So some are going to look at GPA. I think academics are going to be pretty important to almost every institution here, that especially is within RACC. We're going to look at academics first. Now, we also are going to be looking at your co-curricular activities. So the activities that you have inside the classroom and outside of that, your individual pursuits, leadership, things like that. We're looking at all of those kind of components. It might be considered the activities section as you see fit. So thinking about how you've grown through those spaces, the leadership positions that you might have had, all of those notes we think about. Think about essays as well. letters of recommendation. Now, those might be optional for different institutions, but we're going to look at maybe a counselor letter of rec or a teacher letter of rec. Those are two of the most popular ones that are often required for admissions colleges to submit within the application. So we'll look at, what does your counselor know about you? How have you performed over time? Maybe a teacher will share how you've done inside the classroom, what kind of leader you are. How do you speak up with, questions that you might have? How do you seek out assistance, or how do you help others? So it's really helpful for us to know what kind of classmate you're going to be when you come into our campus. We also look at the rigor. So again, as we were talking about academics, we're going to see what did you take advantage of based on what you have available to you, and how did you perform in those respective areas? If you're thinking about going into a STEM related field, well, we might be thinking about looking at your math or your science related performance, thinking about rigor in those things and how well did you do in those to make our assessment if you're a good fit for our particular institution. Some schools might look at test scores. In a lot of cases, those are test optional or might be required these days, depending on the school. But that might come into consideration depending on where you're applying. Awards and achievements. So this is something that you really want to share more about yourself, anything that you've accomplished, whether it be a small award inside school, whether it be a competitive one in an athlete or in the arts, or whether it be a nationwide skills competition, whatever it might be, we certainly want to know about that. And then the last piece is demonstrated interest. All right, so things that we've talked about kind of as I went through some of those things, test scores, extracurriculars, demonstrated interest, and portfolio examples of work. So we'll talk through a little bit more of those as we're going through today. All right, so first, personal information. We're going to look at some of the demographic information. So varies by college, but might include gender identity, age, military status. So whether you might be a dependent or thinking about going into the armed forces, your citizenship, how long you've been in the United States as well. It no longer includes race, ethnicity, but as I mentioned, that is something that we are able to see on a student's profile before you apply and after a student, we have our admitted classes. So those are things that we can still consider. Your family information, so how many siblings you have, their ages, if you'd like to put that, your parents, their relationship status, and their education history too, so we can tell if you might be a first-generation college student. Any other information about languages spoken? What is your first language? Maybe you have taken Spanish and you are speaking, reading, and writing that alongside English, maybe as your first language. That's a common one that I often see, but I see a lot of other students that might speak other languages at home, but you're speaking other languages at school, which is awesome. Tell us all about those languages. We certainly want to know. And then religious identity. A lot of these times, they're not always required for you to include all of these things, but we do see kind of the best, the more that you share with us, the more helpful that might be for us to understand your background. All right, we're also going to see your academic info, the high school you attended. Maybe you changed high schools. We'll see a couple of those as well. Coursework and the rigor, what was offered. So we'll be able to understand maybe about the curriculum, whether it's AP or IB, or you have dual enrollment opportunities. We'll see honors levels, things like that. So what has been available to you and your course load and how many years of each course subject. So we'll think about those kinds of things as we're going through that. We'll take a look at your grade trends, right? So how did you perform maybe in the first year? How did you perform in the second year? Maybe you added on an AP class or a dual enrollment class or something like that, or you did the full IB curriculum, whatever it might be, right? We want to see kind of the trends that you had. Maybe you struggled in Algebra 2, but you got better in pre-cal. So that's totally okay. We just want to observe kind of your progress through, and we see all of those kinds of things in your transcript too. We'll see your unweighted versus weighted GPA. Some colleges will kind of take that GPA, maybe they'll utilize that, maybe they'll recalculate a GPA based on the classes that you have. And so that's something that might come into consideration. We'll see a class rank if you have that. Again, not always super common, but I do see that in some schools in California. And then we'll also maybe take into consideration that intended major or future career plans that you're thinking about pursuing. Now, we talked a little bit about test scores as well. So as I mentioned, SAT or ACT. General advice at this point is that Some may recommend that you take it, but it's completely up to you. There are plenty of schools out there that are still test optional, that if you decide you do not want to submit a test, that's perfectly fine. However, some are requiring them. So it may be helpful for you just to take it to see where you stand and if it's a good fit for you to submit it when you are applying to schools. And maybe if that test score could be fit within that particular range of that college. So always a great question to ask. Do you require or are you test optional? And then super scoring. Super scoring essentially means that you are taking the best of the different section scores from maybe if you've sat multiple times for a particular test, which I hope not too many, but maybe you sat twice and you have a better reading score and a better science score in one versus the other. And so it's really important to be able to have that and include that information on your application. We also have standardized testing policies too. So maybe it's test required, maybe it's flexible, optional, or test-free completely. And so that's really important to us. So we can take that into consideration. So always be asking those questions as well. All right, so merit scholarships may have different criteria at some colleges as well. So that might be something again to ask, is it required for me to submit test scores in order to be considered for scholarships? And then how and when should you report your testing? Can you do it just on the application and is that going to count? Or do your test scores have to be submitted from the testing agency in order to be considered within the application? Always a great question to ask and highly recommend getting that information way in advance so you can be prepared if you have to take the test. All right, so extracurriculars and activities. This is certainly a big section in the fact that what are we looking for? So we're looking for a level of dedication, consistency, and or depth. So how long were you involved in those particular organizations? Did you grow in particular leadership positions as well? What responsibilities did you take on? Maybe you founded a club at your particular school. You saw a need and you wanted to meet it because you acknowledged that other students at your school were having maybe same issues or could benefit from this opportunity. So that's something we certainly take into consideration. We're also looking at your passions and your interests. What do you really enjoy? What fulfills you? I see plenty of students that include things like, how often they read or what they do, art and drawing outside of the classroom, because some of those things that you really enjoy can't always be classified within a particular club. Now, I really recommend when we're looking at applications, think about more of those structured opportunities and maybe your individual pursuits go at a different area within your application, but it is something to keep in mind there too. And that potential to contribute. So we're thinking about where does this student really enjoy, where are they seeking out opportunities, and where are they going to contribute to our campus community? Are they going to be a leader? Are they going to be a great friend or a mentor? Whatever that case might be, it's something that we think about. How do you spend your time? So some of the examples are certainly going to include maybe part-time jobs. I know I had one when I was in high school, maybe an internship that you've gotten already. That's awesome. That's going above and beyond. Maybe you've gotten that work experience in an area that you really want to pursue. Any family responsibilities that you might have as well. Certainly want to know about that. And that doesn't simply just mean chores. Maybe you are helping take care of a family member, whether that be a sibling or a grandparent. You're providing care for them, or maybe you're working part-time to help support your family, right? All of those things are really important to us and something that you want to make sure that you highlight and share with us so we can take that into consideration. The school clubs that you're a part of, what you've joined, make sure that you're not a serial joiner, that you don't just join, 4 in your senior year of college, but make sure that those things are intentional, that they're things that you really care about and you want to be doing, especially when it comes to community service. Don't just do it for the college app, do it because it's something that you really enjoy, that you really like to do, and that giving back to the community is important to you. Athletics, that's certainly something we see, especially as leadership, being on the field, maybe multi-sport athletes, that's awesome. We certainly take that into consideration, and then going above and beyond in any particular area. So again, as we mentioned, this is just how do you spend your time? How are you filling the hours? We know that the Common App or the Coalition app, or however you might apply, is going to do its best when it comes to the hours. Just do your best as well. It's not going to be exact, but just make sure to fill that in as best as you can and tell us everything you want us to know. All right. honors and awards, some of the applications make these pieces really small. And so some give you a little bit more space. So when it comes to this, the honors and awards, don't overlook anything that's special that really makes you stand out from the rest of applicants. That might be a simple school award or an English honors award, or it might be, something that you had the student of the year, as I mentioned, some other opportunities too when it comes to awards. So we really want to think about evidence of a unique talent or a place where you stand out or an experience. Make sure that you define those local and not widely known awards, especially when it comes to abbreviations. Make sure that you define those. We don't know everything about what you're doing, and so context is really important. Were you the only one selected, or were you 1 out of 50 selected to this particular program? Tell us a little bit more of the context, or maybe how competitive that program was, or that selection, or who you were selected by. Was it voted on by your peers or other staff at your particular high school, or a nationwide competition, right? All those things are going to be super helpful for us to understand the context and the intensity of that award. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little about writing and types of writing colleges see. So the first one is certainly going to be your personal statement. This is kind of the standard that all colleges will at least start with, and this will most likely be your Common App, or if you're applying on the coalition, your coalition essay. So this is just kind of be that 650 word essay where we learn a little bit more about you, what's important to you, and you can utilize that oftentimes across multiple institutions. That's why it's important to make sure that you don't add any specific colleges or names within that. Make it just specific to you. Make sure you're thinking about how you are impacted, what you think, rather than setting the stage or a story about something else. Make sure that it's always focused on you. So that's the first one. Then we'll also see some supplemental questions. There may be 1 word short answer or paragraph responses to a specific college, mostly why are you interested maybe in this major? Why are you interested in our academic institution? And then maybe 1 extra question that they're kind of making you think a little bit more on. And we want to know a little bit more about your research into our institution, generally speaking. So make sure to kind of put in the work and don't leave these until the last minute. Any additional information we'll also see. So anything else that you want to tell us about? So maybe there might have been a dip in grades or change in schools, or other opportunities that you might want to share more about that you didn't fit in any particular section in the rest of your application. Again, if you don't tell us, we don't know it. We don't always have the chance to interview students either, so it's really important that everything you want us to know needs to be in this essay and in these spaces. And then emails and text message. We'll see your style of writing as well. But I'll also say we see the style of writing based on how you describe your activities, how you describe your leadership positions, how you answer some of those questions. The activities portion will really help me understand a little bit more about the style of writing, what you choose to describe, how you describe it. So make sure to not overlook how you're writing about those activities portions we discussed a few slides ago. Okay, so in those essays, what are we looking for? We're looking for your personal qualities and values. What is important to you? So your voice, your passion, and your interests. We're looking at that quality of writing. How have you taken to heart what your English teacher has taught you about the style of writing and how to go about writing some of those essays as well. And again, that potential to contribute to our campus community. What is important to you? How do you empathize with others? How do you see the world, right? These are really important to us, and we want to understand more about how you put those things into words and how you interact with others. So it matters because it breathes life into your application. It helps us understand more about you. It feels like kind of we met you. You'd be surprised how often I really kind of get the understanding of who a person is just by how they write their essay, how they fill out some of the application sections, your style and your demeanor. Maybe you're kind of a little sarcastic. Maybe you're really straightforward and to the point. Maybe you're deeply empathetic, maybe you're more witty, whatever it might be, you really can tell some of those sense of character traits and things like that through your essay and the style of writing. But we see you not just as a person, but as a student, kind of seeing all of those pieces. So not just as an applicant, it really puts life to you as we're reading through your application. But it also highlights something else that we can't learn from the rest of the application. So if there's something that you want us to know, it really helps us understand a lot more about you. So don't wait till the last minute for these pieces. Make sure, especially when it comes to any supplemental essays, save those to start working on those very early, because those can be really important to us down on the line. All right. Letters of recommendation, again, not always required here, but who writes them? So typically a teacher or a counselor. Some students I've seen have a letter of recommendation from maybe a mentor, or you have a CBO, college-based organization, and you have a mentor or advisor there as well. Maybe it's a coach or a community leader, internship advisor, whatever it might be. That might be someone that you think about getting your letters of recommendation from, who can share a little bit more about who you are as a student, as a person, as an applicant in the context of their lens. So it depends on how many you need. Like I mentioned, generally it's 1 to 2, maybe a counselor or a teacher are most often required. So those are always safest best to start asking. I would highly recommend think about that in your 11th grade year. Start thinking about who you want to request a letter of recommendation from. And they're important because, as I mentioned, we get to insider info about you, essentially. Understand more about your academic ability, your character, your personality. Maybe there's also been some things that have happened in your lifetime or during your years of high school that are a little bit harder for you to describe, that maybe a counselor might be a better advocate to help describe that situation. They see it from an outsider's perspective and can kind of give that understanding to help us understand how you've gone about through maybe those challenges or adversities, how you've persisted through those, what kind of friend you've been, what kind of schoolmate you've been. So those can be really helpful for us. Not always required, but get to know your counselor, get to know at least that one teacher so they can really write a great letter of recommendation about you, because it could be really important depending on the colleges that you are applying to. All right. One of the last pieces that we certainly talk about is demonstrated interest. Now, this is certainly not a requirement. Many schools don't always take into consideration demonstrated interest, but some might. And that can be really important to us, especially as we are making final offers of admission to our institution. That could really make a difference in us. So what are some of the ways that you could show and demonstrate your interest? Biggest one is going to be visit campus. No matter how far the institution might be, if you've visited, especially if you're from California and you've visited, my institution in Pennsylvania, that really means a lot to me. And so that shows that you've made the effort. You've put your feet on campus. You've stepped foot there. And so that's really important to us. So it really can make a difference to show that you've visited. Maybe you submit an early application. That might mean early action or early decision. Early decision, as we mentioned, is binding. So it's a little bit different of a process, but that is definitely a way that you show that if I am admitted to this institution, I will come. And that definitely helps us understand a little bit more about you. Schedule an admissions interview if a school offers that. So that means just a couple of questions, a one-on-one opportunity to meet with either an admissions representative. It might be an alum, it might be a current student, or an admissions ambassador. So they might be interviewing with you as well. They'll take notes, that'll be documented and included in the application review. So it's really important to take that seriously. Again, do your research in advance, know a little bit more about that institution, but also take it as a time to learn more about the institution too and the people there. You can also attend a college fair or high school visit. Certainly, whenever you come to meet us in person at your high school, if we get the chance to meet you there, or at a college fair, it's always a great interaction. So make sure you get that scan or fill out a card, whatever it might be. But we love to see that engagement, and that really does mean something to us too. If all those things don't work out, that's okay. You can also contact us by phone or by email. We'll certainly take that into consideration. So any of those kinds of touch points, if you will. This is a super easy one. Attend an online webinar offered by the college, so a virtual information session. Take the virtual tour if the school has one. A lot of those times it'll be brought into the system, and that way it really helps us see that you've taken an interest, you've learned more about the campus, and you've done the best you could from the comfort of maybe your own home, without having to, pay the cost of traveling there. We know that it's not always easy to travel to an institution, maybe across the country or even to the next state over, but doing all that virtual engagement still really matters to us and still can help and make a difference. Open emails sent by the colleges. Yes, we can see if we sent you an email, if you opened it, we can see if you clicked on it too. And so that does actually make a difference sometimes, really minutely, but it really will take into consideration if you're paying attention to us. Maybe sometimes if we if we have opportunities for a scholarship, that might be something we really want to encourage you to check out. And then any supplemental essay responses too. There might be some other opportunities that you might show you're interested in our institution. So check those out or think about and ask if there are any opportunities for those as well. All right, so admissions decisions. So now you've done all of this work, you've submitted all of your applications, you've demonstrated your interest maybe, you've gotten a letter of recs. Now the final admissions decision. So the first one, hopefully this is what you all get. You're admitted, congrats. You get the opportunity of choice to choose. Maybe it is from your first choice college or some other ones that you are considering attending. We certainly hope that you get plenty of wonderful offers. We also might have a conditional admissions offer. It might mean that we're waiting for some other continued information or your mid-year grades to make sure that you are a good fit for our class. That way it shows you that senior year is still important and you show us that you're still taking your grades and your coursework seriously. Deferred, that means that maybe we are waiting until we have our final and complete applicant pool, and we want to move you into the next round to make sure that we're making a decision based on our entire applicant pool at that point. So not a no, but it does mean that we're kind of waiting for some more information for full context of our class. So stay engaged, stay interested if that's a school that you still are interested in attending, but just note that we're just waiting for more information. I also offer you an opportunity to be on the wait list. So that means that we couldn't offer you full admission for that first round, but if you're interested in attending, you still want to show that you're interested in this, please jump on our wait list, and that means that might determine if we're able to give you an offer of admission. It's kind of a placeholder as we're filling out the rest of our class to see where students land, but again, it gives you an opportunity to say, yes, I do still really want to attend this institution, and that's really important to us. So if that's a school that you really enjoy and you're still hoping for an admissions decision, I would accept the wait list. And then from there is also the denied, or as I like to call it, the redirection. Just means that unfortunately for this round, we couldn't offer you admission into our institution. I've worked for quite a few competitive institutions where I always recommend considering the transfer process in the future. And so the thing about the transfer process is the fact that students might want to attend either a community college or another institution and then apply to transfer. In some cases, the transfer process might be more straightforward. Financial aid and scholarships might look a little different, but that is another opportunity. So never know that it's not always a complete no. There are pathways. And I would just be, forthright with your admissions counselor if that is somewhere that you do want to attend. Ask if there's any opportunities, or be really excited about the schools that have offered you and really do want you to attend their institution, because that could be a really great fit for you. They really want you. It's fun. It's fun to be wanted. So check out some of those opportunities, because there might be some unique, special ways that you feel excited about that particular institution too. All right. So I talked about the admissions decision, the review process, the decisions you might get. Now let's talk about your game plan. I really like to look at the college admissions process as a reflective opportunity. So I really encourage you to use this time to learn and reflect about you. Consider your values. What is important to you? What are you looking for in an institution? Do their passions really align with your particular interests? Do you see yourself visiting there and enjoying your next 4 years of that institution? Can it provide you those opportunities? But also know yourself, know your transcript, and know your resume. Have you worked really hard to stay involved and gain leadership? Or have you really just enjoyed a couple of clubs here and there and part-time job, and that's awesome, great too. Think about the rigor of the classes that you've had, your performance in some of those. Do those match some of the schools that you're interested in, and kind of their admissions and past admissions criteria? I know your strengths and weaknesses. What do you really enjoy? Are you close to your family? Maybe that means that you don't want to go too far away from home for school. Or maybe you are super fiercely independent and you know that you want to go all the way around the world for another institution, and that you're going to be great and you're going to thrive. So know your strengths and know your weaknesses. Every strength can be a weakness, but just know what's important to you. And then learn and reflect about the colleges. As we mentioned, do you want to go far away? Do you want to go close to home? Do you like the cold? Do you want to experience seasons? Or are you just pretending? It's kind of like I tell students when they're filling out their college roommate survey. Be who you are, fill it out as who you are, not who you want to be. So think about those opportunities, and think about kind of where you fit within that and what's important to you. The better aligned that you are with your values and what's important to you, the better it is and the easier it will be to be able to build your list. So build your list as you go through that. Maybe, 3 to 4 schools each category. Be considerate, be real about some of these. So one framework of looking at this is either your likely, your target, or your reach schools. So your likely means that you've looked at some of the admissions profiles, you've talked with your high school counselor a little bit more, you understand about your academic match and if that might be a good fit. So likely would be ones that you know that you could get into, okay? Target means that it might be a little aspirational. You're right around that range, but maybe they do a holistic review, or maybe you are dependent on scholarship dollars to really make sure that that's an opportunity for you, whatever it might be. That could be a target range. And then some reach schools, right? Dream big. Think about maybe what you've seen in the movies or what a major that you really love. There's a university that's kind of far, that you could dream of attending that might be a good fit, right? So those are reaches. So do your best to kind of categorize them. But what I think is really important, as we mentioned at the bottom, is that every school on this list should be a school that you are interested in attending. Okay, don't put schools on your list just because maybe your friend over there did, and that could be kind of cool. Make sure that you've done the research about it, that you could really see yourself attending that particular institution. But you have to get real with yourself, and know that your pathway is going to be your own pathway too. But make sure you add to those lists acceptance rates, averages, looking at the average test scores, whether it's test optional, look at the deadlines, look at a bit of that financial aid information, whether there are any grants or scholarship opportunities that they might offer, whether it be guaranteed or potential, and take that into consideration when building out those lists too. Financial fit is also a component of a college fit, which I know we have another great video or presentation on. So make sure to check that out. But all of this is going to be included when building out your game plan. So I hope this gives you a little bit more information about how college admissions decisions are made. But remember that you're not alone in this process. Reach out to us admissions reps if you have specific questions or want to learn more about your our own admissions processes. But know that this process is human. It is imperfect. It will not always make sense. The most that you can do is just lean on yourself, make sure that you are taking responsibility of your application, you're doing the best that you can, and you are focused on your own journey, because wherever you go is going to be a great place, and that university or that college or that pathway is going to be so lucky to have you there no matter what. Take care.